Remember, 3 years ago, we were energy independent, and now our country's a mess.
This whole thing is born of the hatred and the contempt of the left, okay? The progressive left.
Few people understand just how corrosive this is to the country and to the idea of the country.
Trump, Tucker, Elon, and Fox presenter unite in a warning to the nation, emphasizing the pivotal role of those engaged in the Trump campaign.
Hey, this is something that's potentially risky for all humans everywhere.
I don't know anything about it, but he was another person that was treated badly, and he was a patriot. But we'll see what happens with that. We have a lot of people involved in the campaign that have done a tremendous job, and based on the polls, we're doing extremely well.
Amidst political fervor, Trump's desire for record-breaking numbers clashes with the contentious nature of an election during Super Tuesday.
You can't have an election in the middle of a political season. We just had Super Tuesday, and we had a Tuesday after a Tuesday already, and we had Louisiana the other day, a couple of days ago, and we won in a record number, the highest number ever recorded.
The narrative delves into the divisive rhetoric surrounding immigration, highlighting the perpetuation of racism by casting blame on the founding fathers.
New immigrants to this country are told immediately that the people who founded the country, white men, are the problem. They are evil. So not only does this inculcate racism in our immigrants, which is a terrifying prospect, but it also makes the workplace a hellscape, a sort of corporate Jim Crow structure that degrades everyone and that's inherently immoral.
Biden's campaign strategy takes a dark turn as fear tactics emerge in response to waning voter support in the face of Trump's resurgence.
Biden is already heeding that advice and turning to some good old-fashioned fear-mongering because he's losing key voters to Trump. The big guy now pumping out ads to try and win them back, but it looks like it ain't working.
Exploring the concept of digital superintelligence, the discourse delves into the unpredictable terrain beyond the metaphorical event horizon.
We'll have the sort of AGI singularity. Sometimes digital superintelligence is called like a singularity, like a black hole, because just like with a black hole, it's difficult to predict what happens after you pass the event horizon of a black hole. And we are currently, circling the event horizon of the black hole that is digital superintelligence, the event horizon.
In the electoral battleground, Trump wages war against Joe Biden, portraying him as the epitome of presidential failure.
But we're in the middle of an election right now, and we're fighting crooked Joe Biden, who's the worst president in the history of our country, by far, who's let this country go to hell. The borders, millions and millions of people coming in from prisons, from mental institutions, that many people coming in from prisons and mental institutions, think of it, and are coming into our country, and this guy's just letting them come in by the millions. I think we have 15 million people already. People don't say that, I say it. And I bet I'm right, too. So we're going through this weaponization of our government to try and knock out somebody's political opponent. And so far, based on the polls, it's not working at all. The people understand it. We have a man who just ruled they'd like the trial to start in 21 days or something. And I don't know how you can have a trial that's going on right in the middle of an election. Not fair. Not fair. It's not fair at all. He knows that, too. He's a Democrat judge. He wants to do that because they're all trying to damage Trump as much as possible. It's having the reverse effect, but maybe someday it won't. I don't know. But it's having the reverse effect. It's a terrible, terrible precedent, a terrible thing to do. They could have started this when I left office. You could have gone back 3 years, more than that. When I left office, all of these things could have been started so we wouldn't be quibbling over starting this week or that week or 2 days or 3 days. It wouldn't have mattered. This thing would have been over 2 years ago. They could have started. They should have never started because there's no case. If you read Andy McCarthy's piece, if you read Jonathan Turley's piece, you read legal scholars all over the world, they say this DA case is a hoax and it's something that shouldn't have. It's not even. They said there's no. And there is no.
The Democrats' boasts about the Biden-era stock market are met with skepticism, viewed as a mere facade masking underlying economic instability.
And it's so funny the Democrats have been bragging about Biden's stock market, and now they're like, oh, it's a ploy. The whole stock market's a ploy. And Joy Reid wants to investigate Trump, but not Nancy Pelosi. Talk about a pump and dump. Nancy and Paulie P been pumping and dumping their whole lives. Pillow talk. All of a sudden, he happens to know exactly when and where to sell and what to buy.
Yep.
Just happens to be his wife's the Speaker of the House. Come on, Jessica. The whole market is a pump and dump. Eventually, stock market's going to correct and everybody on the inside is going to sell and everybody else is going to be sitting here like, what just happened? This is the way life is. What do you think the Clinton Foundation was? Clinton Foundation was
reputable charity
1,000 times worse than Truth Social going public. It's listed on a stock exchange. It's got transparency. Instead, the Clinton Foundation just goes to the Saudis while she's Secretary of State and says, pay up. They give her $20 million and they use it on their daughter's wedding.
Trump's alarm over surging gasoline prices reverberates, echoing concerns about economic volatility reminiscent of bygone eras.
So there it goes again. The price of gasoline is skyrocketing, and just like the old days under Biden, and came down a little bit, but it's going up and it's going up big. It's nearing $4 a gallon in many states and much more than that in some. Prices are up almost 6% in the last month alone, and they'll be going even higher. It's going to go higher and higher. The price of gasoline affects everyone and everything. American families are paying for it not only at the pump, but also in the cost of your groceries, your package deliveries, and virtually everything you have and everything you buy. Joe Biden actually wants high gas prices because they help with his ridiculous policy of abolishing gasoline-powered engines and forcing everyone into expensive all-electric cars that don't go very far, as you know, and they take a long time to charge up. That's why when Joe Biden came into office, he shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, which was a travesty. He canceled our oil leases in Alaska, but he approved the Russian pipeline going to Germany and all over Europe. And he waged on American energy. That's what he did. He waged on anything American having to do with energy. In addition, Joe Biden's weakness plunged the world into chaos and conflict, further driving up the prices you're paying at the pump. And they're going higher and fast. When I'm reelected, reducing the price of gasoline for American families will be a day one priority, and that includes electricity and everything else that comes with it. We will drill, baby, drill. We will slash energy crushing regulations, and we will restore peace and stability to bring gasoline prices down for everybody.
The irony of Democratic opposition fuels Trump's ascent, transforming him into a figure of greater wealth and influence amidst their inability to articulate a coherent stance.
The man was literally thrown off of Twitter. He was forced to start his own social network, and he did. And you know what? The Dems deserve it. The sad part about this whole thing is that the Democrats have literally made him richer. They've made him more powerful. And the Democrats, through their hatred, are going to make him president of the United States. They are incapable of looking at themselves in the mirror and say, I hate this man. I unfriended all my friends and family in 2016 when he was elected. Because who did Donald Trump? I mean, what is the problem?
The discourse turns to the contentious issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, perceived as a form of anti-white racism by those advocating for structural fairness.
Affirmative action and its new version, DEI, are, of course, by definition, forms of anti-white racism. White men are at a structural disadvantage in getting jobs and getting contracts and getting into schools. There's kind of no pretending it's anything but what it seems to be. And most people know that. So the arrangement that America's had with immigrants for over 100 years has been, come to our country because there is opportunity here. And implied in that is meritocracy. If you work hard, if you have ability, you can ascend the ladder. But affirmative action and now DEI invert that arrangement.
The issue, I think, with the ADL is not a question of hate speech, obviously. It's that the ADL and a lot of other organizations have become activist organizations which are acting far beyond their stated mandate or their original mandate. And I think far beyond what donors to those organizations think they are doing.
you don't have to look far in the United States for moral outrages also on video. There's not a city in this country, not just the big cities, but cities of 10,000 people. I was in one yesterday that doesn't have some constellation of addicted young people living outside. We call them the homeless. They're addicts. And they're addicted to that were imported across an open border, allowed by the Biden administration. And they're more than 100,000 a year. What does the majority of the country have in common with one another? Because look, if the arc of the last century's American history is super, super interesting. So you have this massive influx of immigration, the Ellis Island generation, late 18th, or 19th, early 20th century. And it's both good and bad. We only remember the good, but there was a lot of social volatility, like a lot. Like the mayor of Chicago got in his house. There was on Wall Street, like the Wobblies, the anarchists, like the foot soldiers that were immigrants, working class European immigrants. And part of the problem was there was just a lot of immigrants, and I mean, Sacco and Vanzetti, who the clerk in, was it Brockton, Mass? Anyway, it was in Mass, outside Boston. They'd been in the country for just a few years, and they immediately got sucked into radical politics. Well, why was that? Well, because they weren't kind of bought in or rooted in or hadn't been fully assimilated into American society. So then you have the First World War, and we basically shut down immigration, and we have this period of settling where, like, all Americans, let's think through our civic religion, what ties us together, and then that leads into October of 29, and you do have this national crisis that lasts for more than a decade, and we didn't blow up. And we had a successful, the CCC, we had these big programs, which I'll say this as a conservative, kind of worked in keeping people fed and focused, and gave them purpose, kept the country from collapsing during the Great Depression.
I think the key point was really that it's important for us. It's important for us to have a referee, just as you have a referee in a sports game or all sports games, and that the games are better for it to ensure that the players obey the rules, play fairly. I think it is important for similar reasons to have a regulator, which you can think of as a referee, to ensure that companies take actions that are safe and in the interest of the general public.
Did you tell them that AI is a double-edged sword?
Yes.
And what did you mean by that? Can you explain that?
Well, the metaphor?
Yeah, I mean,
well, if you have a sword with two sides, one side can get you, even though you're trying to get something with the other side.
When you're telling the senators that, though,
that's how it works.
What do you want them to take away from
I think
that?
It's more important to make sure your hilt is also, you have a hilt, not a sharp thing.
Yeah. Fair enough. What do you think how do you think they took the message that you brought to them?
Well, I think it was very civilized discussion, actually, among some of the smartest people in the world. So I thought Senator Schumer did a great service to humanity here, along with support of the rest of the Senate. And I think I think something good will come of this. I think this meeting may go down in history as being very important for the future of civilization.
Do you think some legislation is going to come out of this?
Probably. I'm not sure what the time frame of that is, but
yeah.
The legislative process is not a swift one.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think things will go in the right direction generally. Senator Schumer, or Leader Schumer, did ask everyone to raise their hands in the room to see if they were in favor of AI regulation, and I believe almost everyone did.
They have to close the borders. Our country is being overridden. This is an invasion. Our country is being invaded by people nobody even knows who they are, where they come from. Millions of people, I predict 15 million people within a short period of time, probably have 15 million people already. That's bigger than most states. And these people come from the wrong places. They're coming from very bad places. There's no checks, there's no balances. It's a disgrace. What's happening to our country is a disgrace. We have to close the border, let people come in, but they have to come in legally. We had the best economy ever just a short while ago, and we're going to have that again. We're going to have people come into our country, but they're going to come in legally, and we're going to get your energy costs down by numbers that nobody would have said even possible. We have some sections of this country that are paying the highest numbers in the history of our country and among the most expensive energy anywhere in the world, and yet we have more liquid gold, I call it, under our feet than any other nation. Just 3 years ago, we were energy independent, and now we're going around begging for energy. So we're not going to have that anymore. We're going to have a strong country. We're going to have a respected country. We have to win an election, and we should win it by a lot, because there's never been anybody worse at doing that job than Joe Biden. So we're not going to take time to celebrate. We'll celebrate in 8 months when the election is over. November 5th, I believe, will go down as the most important day in the history of our country. So start thinking about it. Start thinking about your vote, because this vote is going to be the most important vote you've ever cast. And again, for this evening and for last week and for all the weeks before, for the tremendous success we've had in this primary, I want to thank everybody. But much more importantly, we have to get to work to beat Joe Biden, the worst administration, the worst president in the history of our country.
We're witnessing an era of political thuggery. Evil forces spending billions of dollars to destroy one man while they ignore you.
We need to stop whining, stop complaining. We know what the hell we're up against. It's not news, it's a fact.
Our president and a group of fascists are ruining our country, leaving America in terrible shape. What will it take to turn things around?
They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it, because they could right now, today. He could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape. And they're very much against me saying these things.
With the American government set to raise taxes 4 times, it's increasingly likely that China will end up building all our cars.
They want to raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car. But make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have.
Donald Trump asserts that we've just experienced another instance of dealing with a highly conflicted judge.
We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before.
Trump claims he was under a harsh gag order, yet he still leads Biden by a significant margin.
I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it, I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put 2 sentences together, given by a court.
Trump is forbidden from discussing the conflicted judge, under threat of imprisonment if he does, while he asserts that the trial is unfair. How can justice prevail under such conditions, and what does this mean for our legal system?
And they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. And maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything. But he's nevertheless the president, so we have to use his name. And this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil.
Jesse Waters reveals why people despise Biden, claiming we're in an era of political thuggery with immense sums spent to ruin one man.
This is why they hate him. Biden is a lifelong politician, ran for president 3 times. The last time, He didn't run to help the country. He ran to stop Trump. After he won, he didn't help the country, did he? Because he had already accomplished what he'd set out to do, his lifelong goal of being president. Unlike them, Donald Trump didn't need politics. He had everything he wanted: money, family, real estate, celebrity status. He chose politics to fight for something bigger than himself, for a country crippled by corrupt, lying fools, and to make that country great again. He ridiculed them, and that's the one thing you can't do in Washington. Republican or Democrat, Washington has to pretend it's virtuous. Trump dared to tell the truth. Their policies were stupid. They were hurting Americans. They were stupid. They were ugly, inside and out. And he was more successful than all of them. Washington's status is built on prestige. And suddenly the rest of the country caught on. Maybe these politicians, journalists, and experts were just pathetic pretenders. And the country started ridiculing them too. But more importantly, started asking them questions. Washington couldn't have people mocking them and being curious as to why their policies weren't working and why they were all allowed to insider trade and lie about it. So Washington did the one thing Washington's good at: protect themselves by destroying someone else. Impeachments, raids, arrests, and now convictions. But Trump wasn't a third world dictator that they could just remove in a bloodless coup. We're witnessing an era of political thuggery. Hundreds of millions of dollars in fines, censorship, corporate sabotage, evil forces spending billions of dollars to destroy one man while they ignore you. No Republican presidential nominee could get a fair trial in Manhattan, not with a Soros-funded DA, not with a former Biden prosecutor, and not with a judge who not only donated to the Biden campaign, but to a group called Stop Republicans. And the judge did just that.
The American government revels in their own agenda, which does nothing to benefit the average citizen.
This is to be predicted. These people are hacks. The fair definition of a hack is finding joy in somebody's bad luck, even if what brought them bad luck was wrong. It's like you should a true person, a true Democrat, and I've seen other Democrats say this, that as much as they hate Trump, this was wrong. They're saying they don't care it's wrong, they hate Trump. The key is not to fall into this trap, and as a viewer or anybody, just you got to channel your anger and frustration into productive work. Turn it into energy. Don't waste your time looking at that stuff. You know, you lose a battle, figure out how to win the. And you can only do that if you're focused, good health, strong frame of mind. And it pays to note, none of these cranks and hacks were celebrating about something that directly benefits the average American. They weren't celebrating because they got rid of no cash bail or reduced inflation or fixed a porous border. They were rejoicing over their own mental state. Those other bad things will continue because those bad things don't matter to them. It's their derangement that gets priority. It's no different when they put their mental suffering over Trump's mean tweets ahead of a country that had low inflation and no. But voters are different. They need to have practical stuff. They're paying the prices. They're the victims of. They don't care. They don't have to like Trump. They just want a leader that will solve these problems. You're seeing people with indulging a luxury belief. Their hatred of Trump is all that matters. Kimmel, he doesn't care about. He's got tons of security. The View, you know what? They can afford large meals. As we can see,
Biden's party isn't just aiming to take down Trump. Their goal is to dismantle American civilization. Bad things will continue because to them, they don't matter. Is this the future we want for our nation?
Well, there's nothing like dramatic events to put your life in focus. So what's next for Trump or the Republican Party? Or more important, what's next for you? Anger and frustration are only negatives if you don't channel it into constructive energy. Focus toward having a good day, because a good day is the beginning to a good life. Because their real goal isn't just about taking down Trump, it's taking down you. And only you can take down you. So don't. And you start by having a good day. You can do that and still be pissed. But you can even have a better day if you have a clear mind and turn all that piss into power. One of the aims of the Trump trials is to push everything else that matters off your screen. Suddenly, immigration and inflation fade into the ether. The things that matter to your family become background noise. While the left crows about 34 convictions, you're wondering why it costs $34 to buy milk, bread, and eggs. Fact is, the left isn't celebrating because inflation stopped rising or the border got fixed. Bad things will continue to happen because to them, those bad things don't matter. Keep your eye on that. But most of all, keep an eye on yourself and your family, your friends, because we're entering the third act of a very important movie. And like any movie where it looks like the good guys are in trouble, the protagonists don't give in, retreat, or run off to a bar. They stand up and fight. And the fight begins with you. You are the protagonist in this movie, and only you can triumph. The challenge is there for a reason, and the reason is to test you, to see what you're made of. In some cases, you might not like what you find, but you must persevere. So ask yourself, what are you made of? Strong stuff, or even stronger stuff than you can imagine? Why not find out together?
Instead of whining about how long it will take, we need to seek emergency appeals immediately and give the Supreme Court a chance to fix it.
We have too many lawyers who are risk averse, too many lawyers who will whine and complain. I have spent 40 years sitting down with people who put on legal brass knuckles and take these on in court. I'm at the appellate and Supreme Court level. That's where my focus has been my entire career. So what they need to do now, in my view, is to go up the appellate chain in New York. We need to stop whining about how long that's going to take. Seek any emergency, immediate appeal that you possibly can. That's one lane. And the other lane is to try like hell to get to the Supreme Court. People say, well, they're not going to take it. You know what? If George Patton was said, I don't think I can get to the Battle of the Bulge in time, we would have lost World War II. I am sick and tired of these legal defeatists. We need to stop whining, stop complaining. We know what the hell we're up against. It's not news. It's a fact. We got to fight these people with our smarts. We have to take some risks. We need to push the edge of the envelope. I don't mean in a way that kooks do it. We need to look at Bush versus Gore. Why did the Supreme Court take that case from the Florida Supreme Court? We need to look at things like common law writs, which I know the audience don't understand, but a lot of lawyers do. Not writs of certiorari based on statute, but common law writs based on judicial decisions. We need to give the Supreme Court the opportunity to fix this. Why? We cannot have local acting judges, Soros DAs, 15,000 district attorney's office, God knows how many state judges, destroying our federal election system, influencing how we elect the president of the United States. And if we have a pathway to bring it to the Supreme Court, even though it's rarely used, and by God, we use it, we use every legal quiver that we possibly can muster, rather than sitting around and saying, well, it'll take 3 months. Fine, follow that. Preserve the state appellate system. And as for this idea that I have a faith in the system, what is a judge? He's flesh and blood. He's a person. He's a lawyer who happens to have a robe.
The narrative of the January 6th tragedy was aggressively pushed, with selectively edited clips designed to fabricate events that never actually occurred.
It's almost like you get kidnapped and the kidnapper has a mask on, but once he shows you his face, he's got to kill you.
Correct.
And they've shown their face.
Yeah. Again, I don't think there's anything they wouldn't do. I mean, you put out something, I think it was on Twitter yesterday, which was, to sort of that extreme, like, well, if they can't get Trump this way, what's the next level? And I think they've proven that they'll do that in the past. I think we're now figuring that out. We understand it. I think the system's probably been broken for, much longer than any of us would care to admit. And for me, I saw it firsthand. I think
at least 61 years it's been broken since they killed the president in an election year.
Exactly. And for me, even when we started this process, I'd say it's safe to say I was probably the number 2 target of Russia. And I was like, well, there must be something to it. I know I didn't obviously collude with Russia, but maybe I took a selfie with an agent once because I took 10,000 selfies a day, right? So but even like knowing that I was a target, I was like, I still believed.
I get it.
Because I wanted
get
to,
it.
right? I wanted
No,
to
I
believe
get
it. America's the greatest place in the world, and you can do it. And I'm like, it's the FBI. And again, there's some door kickers that I'm still like, hey, they're home team. I get it. They're doing. Eventually, those guys are going to have to speak up, though, right?
We're long past
I
the
gave
time.
the door kickers a pass for far too long, which is like, hey, they can't go against the leadership, but like, when you're watching this kind of politicization of justice, when you're watching this sort of lopsided level, when they're, they spend more time, kicking down the doors of an Amish farmer selling unpasteurized milk than actually going after people committing terror because, they're trans or, whatever it is that they are. You really lose that ability to get that pass that I really wanted them to give. But I wanted to believe that everything I grew up believing was accurate, and it's all. It's just all. So we have to fix that. That's why we fight now, to actually make it so.
But you saw this on January 6th too. I mean, I know that Joe Scarborough and the rest of the liars presented those people as like insurrectionists and dangerous. They were actually the most pure-hearted and 100%. The most naive about they were literally walking with pocket constitutions saying, no, you can't do this. They believed in the system much more than the people who put them in prison who don't believe in it at all.
Without question. And you saw that. I mean, the narrative was pushed so much. The clips that they used were designed to create something that didn't actually happen. I mean, it's so sick. I always say, it was the first unarmed insurrection in the history of insurrections. I mean, it's never happened before, but arguably, I'd say probably the most heavily armed populace if they wanted to have been, right?
Of course.
But of course it wasn't an insurrection. It didn't matter. And they just wanted to run out the clock.
Them, like, they could hardly believe this was happening. And I think you're describing the same thing. Like, you really believed it in our institutions and our norms and democracy.